In this video I want to take you through which trebles you should replace and why on your lures, what the options are and some of the things to look out for so you don't get snapped off and you don't go losing your fish. There's a whole heap of lures out on the market, as you know, and a lot of them are coming out of China, some of them out of Japan and even America, and they're not quite tricked up, ready for our big fish, our mangrove jack and our barramundi especially. There's a few things that you can do to make your lure even work better than how it comes in the packet, and you need to know which trebles are going to work for you. So I'll give you some examples. There's lures that come out of America for their bass over there. These ripstops are brand new, and the hooks that they come with for a barra or a mangrove jack are a little bit light on. You might get away with one or maybe two fish, but if you get that big fish of a lifetime, you need to have some heavier trebles tricked up so you can hold on to those big fish and they don't bend out. But it's really important, if you're going to change trebles on lures, that you don't go wrecking the balance of the lure. And in some cases, you can actually trick it up to improve the balance. So have a look at this old thing. This is one of my favourites, a Duo Realis. It's a 100 DR, and this thing has a heavier treble on the back and a lighter one on the front. And the reason I've done that is to get a perfect level suspension out of this lure at rest and make it sit there in the fish's face. I love a suspending lure, and I just think for mangrove jack, they love it sitting right in front of them. So this is another one that I've put an extra heavy hook on the front here and some little bit heavier but lighter in comparison to that front one on the back too there. And that gives it a great suspension and a really slow fade instead of what comes standard. And that's part to do with, I'm fishing this in salt water for mangrove jack, but a lot of the bass in the States, they're in fresh water. So the bait tends to sit and suspend in fresh, but not quite in salt, and it'll rise up and it'll move itself out of that strike zone at a stall. So there's some of the reasons why I do it, bending them out. Here's the trebles that I love to use. These BKK Raptor Z's are probably the sharpest heavy gauge hooks on the market in my opinion, the things that I've found to be the most effective. They are super catchy, almost like a Finesse Pro type of hook, and they are probably some of the better rust resistant ones as well, and they've just released them in these smaller sizes. So for a little while I was having to use the bigger ones, but I've held sharks on these smaller ones. Crazy bull sharks I've been able to pull in on these things and they haven't bent out. And the other hooks that I like to use, if I'm using a much bigger hook, I'll use these big owners. These are like a 3X. These are 58 TNs. And I love these on my bigger lures. If I'm using really big flathead gear or barra stuff, big swim baits, these big STXs are great for me. And the lures that I use for jacks, when I replace these ones here, especially at the back, a light gauge but still strong enough treble. These are a 41 BC. It's the black owner packet. And those in a size 6 are the way to go with a lot of jack lures. I fish around 20 pound line, which makes a difference because if you're fishing 40 and running a super heavy drag, then you're going to put more pressure on these trebles. But at 20 pound with a really tight drag, these things work time and again. They haven't failed me. So you'll see that they're on a lot of my jack lures, these 41 BCs by owner. Something that I reckon is a pitfall for you if you're going and buying them. Everyone talks about owner trebles. These things are great, but not at that heavier use. So for barra and mangrove jack, the blue packet, I don't use them. You might get one or two jacks out of them before they start to bend out. They're super sharp, all owner hooks are quality, but they're just not as heavy a gauge. And you can tell they've only got a single X on the packet there. So if you're looking for heavier trebles, you're looking for at least a 2X. You can see the little 2X there. And if you're going up for big barra and cod and things like that, at least 3. One of the other pitfalls that you might run into if you're getting super heavy trebles is the penetration of those trebles sometimes isn't as good. And if you've got a really, really rigid treble and you're fishing for soft-mouthed fish, you can tear big holes. So these little ones, these owners, I love to use them because they've actually got a little bit of give in them. They penetrate, they're super sharp, and they penetrate, but they've got a little bit of give. So I'm not tearing holes in the fish that can then open the fish up to throwing the lure as it's shaking its head, for example. So It's not always the case to just go the heaviest trebles you can find. You've got to think about the balance of the lure, how you can get it to suspend. You've got to think about where the bait gets taken. For the majority of the time, a jack takes a bait at the front, so I try to get that front one heavy if I can. And then you're also looking at the penetration and how it's going to manage that fish during the fight. So hopefully that gives you a few ideas on what to do. You do need, really, if you're going to get serious about barramundi, mangrove jack and Murray cod, you need a range of these hooks, and that helps get your balance right when you're changing them. And the way that I do it, I just put them in the water and test them. And funnily enough, different places, like if you're fishing freshwater brackish or pure salt water on a hot day, all of those things can change your suspension. So I'm constantly changing. I've got loads of packs of these little spare split rings, and they're all about 30 pound or stronger. So hopefully that gives you some help with choosing your trebles, upgrading your gear so you don't bend out and lose that fish of a lifetime, or that fish you've fished all summer for. Because I'll tell you what, it's heartbreak when it happens, and that's how I learned. But yeah, good luck out on the water. I hope you get that big fish this season. And if you haven't subscribed to my channel, I've got loads of these tips and techniques and action videos. I've got a couple of full-length films that you can get your hands on. So make sure you subscribe, there's lots more coming. And comment if there's anything you've found interesting or you want to know more about, and I'll get back to you. And I'll see you in the next video.